Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming for our third and final prelude for the Inside Out online conference, which, as you know, is happening on Saturday, May 22nd and Sunday, May 23rd. Sally will be presenting more about what she's introducing this evening on Saturday in 3 different parts. So it's going to be really exciting because Sally is very much giving us a naturalist feel and allowing us like a little bit of forest and greenery that will really help lift our spirits during the conference. It'll give us a really lovely texture by telling us about the triturations and taking us right into the bush. So a little bit about Sally. She came to homeopathy from a career in ceramics, and she looked to homeopathy because of illnesses that her children had through the 1980s. She studied at the Oceanic Institute of Homeopathy and became a registered homeopath in 2000, so practicing for some time now in the Perth region of WA. She is the principal of homeopath at the Olive Homeopathic Healing Group, and it has 3 locations. She spent several years working at the Cancer Foundation as a volunteer, and she loves to travel, and this way is how she learns and practices. She spent a lot of time in Goa in India in 2005. She volunteered in homeopathic clinics in Sri Lanka in 2011 and has been studying under Professor George Vathoukas in Greece in 2019. After attending a seminar of Elise Timmerman, Sally became interested in the technique of provings by the trituration method and C4 homeopathy. And she says, I found that the process of trituration leads me on a journey. The journey is not only observed and experienced, but also profound in its insights. The substances seem to speak to me, touching my soul, leaving insights and understandings of themselves like gifts. In 2017, Sally has published by herself these experiences on colostrum, olive leaf, and sage. In 2018, with the guidance of an experienced mentor in trituration, a group began triturating Australian native flora, much in demand, with the hopeful intent to explore what remedy treasures the Australian continent holds. So Sally is going to give us an introduction tonight to these triturations, and with her, her colleague and wing woman is Angela Pearce-Jones. Now, Angela Pearce-Jones originally comes from Durban in South Africa. Angela has studied at the Durban University of Technology, where she achieved a master's degree in technology of homeopathy. She graduated in 2003. She had a very practical approach and started working in a lot of different ways while she was living in South Africa, including clinics, volunteering for the Kenyan Abolite Foundation. Is that correct, Angela? She was also in private practice and worked for Walida. She has a family, and during life and all the circumstances that come with that, she moved to Western Australia in 2013 from South Africa with her husband and 2 children. She joined the AHA, thank goodness, in WA in 2016, actually on the committee. And in 2019, she stepped into the National Council representative role, for which we're very grateful. So they're going to take us into journeys to the source. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was a really lovely introduction.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all. And hopefully you'll enjoy the intro into the C4 remedies that we've done, and come to the conference. I'm sure it's going to be really exciting and lots of wonderful information. I think it's time to just launch right into the
Yeah, so Sally and I met earlier this year to have a conversation, to share with everybody in Australia and around the world a little bit more about the experiences of C4 triturations here in WA. And we're going to share that conversation that we had with all of you, and we will share a bit more information after that, and then we'll be open to questions. So yeah, we will, without further ado, we're going to just press play on our screens and share with you our story.
Yeah.
Greetings, everybody. Warm greetings from Perth in WA. My name is Angela Pierce-Jones and I'm here today with Sally Moore.
Hi.
Sally is presenting a paper at our upcoming conference in May in Melbourne. Sally, your presentation is titled Journeys from the Source, Australian Flora Remedies. And I thought it'd be good for our audience to just hear from you. Why Australian flora? What made you choose native substances for your trituration provings?
I'd like to say initially that we're on Whadjuk Noongar land, the Indigenous people for this area, and I'd like to say thank you to them for us being able to do this here. We picked Australian flora because most of our homeopathic remedies or plant remedies are European based, where homeopathy started. And then as homeopathy spread to different countries like America and India, picked up really wonderful, valuable remedies from the flora of those countries. There's not a lot of Australian flora in our materia medica. We're living in the most isolated continent in the world. It has particular qualities, and I thought it was a really good idea to go exploring and see what gems for homeopathy for our clients are actually here. And one of the ways you can do that is to do provings of remedies.
And Sally, tell me, how did you come about choosing which flora were going to be the substances that you were going to source for your each trituration? How did that process come about?
Well, we started with the idea that we would do some triturations, and it happened to be August, and Jane Lindsay was coming to supervise us. Thank you, Jane. And it was the time in Perth when the acacias are in bloom, and it was like, how can you go past those beautiful flowers? They're so indigenous to Australia, and both cultures, the Aboriginal cultures and also the Caucasian cultures, and we thought that would be a really good place to start.
So that was the first trituration that you did.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And your second?
The second, we decided it would be, as a group, the WA committee sort of was throwing ideas around, and we decided that a eucalypt would probably be a good idea, and we decided that the picker would know what remedy it was, but that the rest of the group wouldn't know. And when we were actually started doing the trituration, we couldn't tell if the eucalypt was actually a eucalypt or whether it was a tea tree, mainly because of the perfume. And the third trituration we did was Xanthorrhoea, or grass tree, and in WA it's called the balga. And one of the reasons that we decided to do that was because it is such a completely different plant to, well, acacias and eucalypts, but also very indigenous to the area.
I note from the way the substances were chosen at each trituration, the triturators knew. So in the first trituration, everyone knew what they were triturating. In the second one, only the person who picked it knew what you were triturating. In the third one, the person who picked it was a moderator and didn't take part in the trituration. Do you think knowing what the substance is before the trituration impacts the trituration?
I guess,
given that you changed, that was one thing that seemed to change as you went along?
We changed how we knew and who knew as we went along. That was part of the exploratory aspect, and I would say that you probably have to do a lot more than 3 triturations to actually know a quantitative answer to that question. Although bringing this to the table of that question, as most of the triturators didn't know what eucalypt we were triturating, it's a long word. Quite a few of the triturators, about half of them, actually had an internal visual of a tall, white, gummed eucalypt, white barked, smooth white bark eucalypt. And the Wandoo at certain times of the year actually has smooth white bark. So it's an interesting aspect to actually not really answering the question.
So Sally, the type of provings that you have conducted in WA are specifically called a trituration proving. A lot of us homeopaths are familiar with the idea of provings. Provings form the basis of our materia medica. A lot of homeopaths have taken part in provings where we would ingest already prepared remedy and until we develop symptoms and take note of what those symptoms are over days and weeks. How does a trituration proving differ from the traditional method that most people would be familiar with? And in answering that, could you possibly also just tell us a bit more about trituration and the process of trituration?
Trituration is described by Hahnemann in aphorism 270 in the Organon. It is actually the grinding and scraping of a substance with a dry carrier, usually sack-lac, and in our instances it was sack-lac, in a mortar and pestle. The process renders a substance soluble so that it can continue in the proving or in the making of an actual remedy. No one ingests anything with trituration.
Okay.
It is because the process of grinding and scraping in a mortar and pestle, and you're doing this for a long time, there's a number of layers that you go through. The first layer takes around about an hour. Then the group that is doing the trituration has a feedback session that can take another hour. So each layer takes around 2 hours. So when you do, and then you do the second layer, third layer, fourth layer, consequent layers. Most of our remedies are done to the C3 level, and in this case we've taken it to another level, but I'll talk about that later. But what it means is you're actually in the resonant field of that substance, within its auric field of the substance, paying a lot of attention to the substance and to your physical being, your thoughts, your memories, your mind, your emotions, while you're actually in that process. It's like a resonance that gets transferred, and there's a lot of time that it's done over. With the trituration, we've done them over a minimum of a 24-hour period. Daylight, night light, awake time, sleep time, eating time, not eating time, all the things that you would do in a 24-hour period.
And just people are observing themselves through all of those activities.
Yes, yeah.
Within the 24 hours.
Yeah, each individual triturator is scribing for themselves, and the supervisor is doing a skeletal scribe when we're giving feedback as well. And then we have a 3-month check-in with each other just to see how we're feeling. It's amazing how, for example, somebody will say, oh, my feet have been hurting for the last couple of months, but I think that's because I changed my shoes. And in one of the provings, it was like 3 of the other triturators said, oh, my feet have been hurting too, and they weren't before. Realising, which I think is a fairly common and a fairly normal aspect of a trituration, but that feedback, that often things that you didn't know were actually attached to the actual substance actually are, or quite likely.
So in that way, it's similar to a traditional method in terms of the effects can continue for some time after the initial contact with the substance.
Yes.
And what you're saying is the contact with the substance is slightly different. It is not direct through oral ingestion. It's your experience of
yes,
it.
Yes. It's like you're in the resonant field or in the auric field of the substance. Because it's for a period of time, quite intensely for a period of time, you know, at least a 24-hour period, and then that knock on for the next 3 months, that you often, especially in that 24-hour period, get a lot of feedback from the remedy. Yeah.
Now I know traditionally with just normal preparation, a C3 would be a common trituration level from which remedies would be, you know, so when we're buying a 30C or 200C, it might have been triturated up to a 3C. What level do trituration provings go up to? So are they different?
What we've done is the C4 provings. And in explaining what a C is, it's a concept of the carbon levels of existence. Witold Eckler, so a German chemist in the 1990s, started exploring while he was making remedies to go further in doing the triturations.
Okay.
And what he expounds, what has developed from that, is a concept of the C4. Now, the C4 is a term that is used for any substance that's been triturated more than the C3 times. What happens is you get your substance and then you do the first round of grinding. That is a C1. That tends to be on the physical level that you get experiences. Hot, cold, prickly, not prickly, or smooth. There's a dichotomy in there.
I remember with the acacia one, a lot of people had the itching, like hay fever symptoms initially on that first trituration level.
The second level is the emotional level. Things are pleasant or they're unpleasant. The third level is the mental, the thinking level. It's the level where the intellect, the reasoning, and also the delusion come into play. And that's the level that our remedies are triturated or proved to as a generalization. Most of them are. The thing with these levels is that there's not a definitive cut-off line. They kind of mesh together to some extent, and they're flexible. That's a good
In
word.
terms of the experience one might have while triturating them?
Yes, some people may be experiencing things more on the physical level, and other triturators might experience them more on the mental emotional level. When you go to the C4 level, there's a bit of a leap that goes on. Up until the C4 level, the 1, 2 and the 3 levels, there's kind of a polarity. In our remedies, we understand it as, do I take the new job? Do I stay in the old job? The pros and the cons for those things. There's a conflict. With the C4 level, you get an overarching view of like a solution, a spiritual or a soul solution to what the conflict is.
So you can get almost positive attributes coming through, like connection or harmony, as opposed to it being, you know, I don't know, like I guess if C3 is the delusional level, that's usually a negative or a blocked expression. So is that what you're saying? That when you go up, you can actually, it can move over into positive.
Yeah. You step out of that and you can actually see it for what it is.
Yes.
The judgment drops back. There's an inspiration. There's a sense of freedom. The bonds that have been holding you in that dynamic, you can thin out, and it's easier to find a solution.
Interesting.
And then there's the C5, C6, C7, 8, but I'm not going to go there because we've only done them to the C4, and this is about the conference talk.
Yeah, great. So all the substances that were approved, those were all triturated up to this C4 level.
Yes.
And when you present at the conference, those aspects that you've described will be part of, just in terms of when you're presenting symptoms, that you'll be sharing like those aspects of the C4
Yes.
expression of trituration.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be, we're looking forward to hearing more about that, Sally. Thank you. Sally, this trituration proving method sounds quite interesting to me, just from its origins of the picking of the substance through to the experiences of the provers. In your experience of doing these provings, was there anything interesting that came from these proving experiences? Anything that you weren't expecting, or anything that stands out for you as a learning experience?
That's a good question. Lots of things. I picked the substances for the acacia, and we had decided, the committee had decided that it was not a bad idea to try it. We're experimenting again. We picked 4 different acacias, 2 from Western Australia and 2 that are Eastern States plants but grow here. When I was picking the plants, I did a meditation beforehand and a grounding, and then I went to the plants and I asked them if they were okay with me taking some of the substance to do the trituration. Some of them said, yeah, no worries. I thought, okay, great. One of them, a small 8-year-old girl in a brilliantly beautiful yellow pinafore dress, popped out and skipped around and said, yeah, sure. I thought, right, good, this is going to be an interesting proving. And another substance, I was told very bluntly, in a very gruff tone, go away, leave us alone. And I thought, it's going to be an interesting proving. When we were actually doing the trituration, it wasn't me that got the messages, but it was some of the other triturators that got the message, where we were told by the plant that we were doing it the wrong way and that we needed to talk to the aunties. When we did Wandoo, a similar thing happened, in that we were told we needed to talk to the aunties, which has led myself and one of the other triturators on quite a journey with a lot of tributaries that we've gone up and down, to find out a little bit more about what that actually could mean. We have our own interpretation, and we've got lots of responses from the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I'd like to share that as part of my talk at the actual conference about the triturations. So I hope we see you there.
Yeah, well, I certainly look forward to hearing you speak, and I think that aspect that you've just brought up is what makes these local flora proving so interesting and valuable, especially for us living here in Australia, in WA in particular. So I think it'll be very enriching for people to come and hear about these substances, and maybe that'll also lead to more provings being done of our local substances. So from us in WA, we'll say goodbye. Thank you very much.
See you in May.
We look forward to seeing you. Bye.
Okay. Stop sharing. Right. Now what happens? There you go. Okay, so well, I hope that the first thing I want to say is, as it ended on a note about attending the conference, I may as well just add to that yes, we really do hope that we will see many of you at the conference. I know that the organisers are making time and space for all of us to try and meet in some way or another. So it would be nice to connect and have chats and discuss everything that we've been learning together at that time. Sally, I'm quite enjoying watching back our conversation.
When it was warmer.
I think just listening to the conversation again, I can see that there's possibly some things that some people might like to know more about. Certainly listening to it for me, I thought that when you were talking about the C4 trituration, and you said you termed it as a solution, and you also said that a C4 is actually a term really for anything that is a C4 and above. So it doesn't mean literally only a C4 trituration potency. It could mean anything above a C4. You gave us a little description about C1 to C4. I thought it would be quite nice for people to hear a bit more about the full spectrum, so the qualities as they change, because a C4, as was described, is the center point. I know from the trituration handbook, it talks about the C4 potency as the heart or the bridge. So it's the central point. So I thought it'd be interesting maybe for people to hear more about all the different levels going up to level 8 and how they change, going from, C0, C1 is physical, and it's kind of expanding through to C4. Where does it go from there?
Thanks, Angela. It's a good question, and Angela and I had a quick chat before we just showed the video to you, because two of the remedies were actually done to the C5 and one was done to the C6. So it's a really good idea that we talk about those levels and just fill it in a bit more. A lot of the information is from the Trituration Handbook, Into the Heart of Homeopathy. You can get it online. Anika Hodgland and Judy Schraubman. Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing words. That's what it looks like. It's a wonderful, wealth of information. But talking about the concept of a C4, as I said in the video, we went to our remedies are made to the C3, and there's a polarity up to that point. When you get to the C4, there's a bit of a leap where there's a connection that comes with your inner self, with your heart, your soul. We tend to drop the judgment. We tend to be able to observe what's actually been happening in our lives or in the situation. And at this level, we step out of the polarity and we can view with acceptance. As I said, it's where we start to connect with our heart. And it's like with the chakra system, the heart is the bridge from the physical levels into the more spiritual levels. With the C levels of existence, there's a similarity. The heart is the balancing point. It's where the C4 is a balancing point. The next level, the C5, which we did the Acacia and the Wandu to, the I is dropped and the focus becomes more on the we as the primary focus. It becomes more about the collective realm. It's where the miasms can come in, the archetypes. It's where the individual unconscious aspects start to play out in a system or within a group. With the C6, which the Wandu went to, we had no intention of taking it to the C6, but one of the triturators was told, take it to the C6. It was me, which means that you're doing another whole layer of grinding. And believe me, your wrists get tired. But anyway, so we went to the C6. C6 is around the collective unconscious, as the C5 is about the individual unconscious patterns. The C6 is around the collective unconscious patterns, the collective archetypal levels, ancestry, mankind as a collective. Going to the C7 is a global archetypal realm. The messages of the substance tend to be on a much more of a global level, which maybe would be a good idea to do some remedies to that level to get a few resolves around COVID, but that's another story. The C8 is transformation of the opposites. It's all or nothing, creation of oneness, and it's beyond individual understanding. I've taken that again from the Trituration Handbook, and when I read that, I went, that's probably why I don't understand that level yet, because
it's beyond understanding.
I'm not there yet.
From what I've seen, though, typically, maybe in terms of what's available to purchase, it seems to me that C4, 5, 6, what is typically available? I haven't really ever seen anything higher than that.
I&E Apothecary in America do the C4 and C5 and C6 triturations, and you can buy them from there. And I'm sure that you can access them through contacting Elise Timmerman in, is it Holland? In Europe. And Jane Lindsay would know as well of other places where you can actually access them. Other people have made a number of remedies or retriturated remedies, our common remedies like pulsatilla, gelsemium, graphite, calcarb, to the C4 levels. So they are available.
Okay. Well, I will put in the link in the chat room, I will put the authors for the Trituration Handbook and maybe also the name of the I&E Organics Apothecary if people, it's a very interesting site to go and visit and see what they've got available on it. In practice, so this is, it's obviously I don't want to say new because it's not new, it's an avenue in homeopathy that one can explore and use these C4 triturations in practice. In practice, why and when would you use a C4? So where does it come in useful in practice?
Because homeopathy is all about actually treating our clients. So it comes down to when would you use it and what would you expect from in a resolve from a remedy. When you have a situation where you've got this client who you are sure you've got the right remedy, the right constitution for, and it helps them enormously, and then they come back and you give it to them again, helps them enormously, and then they come back. When the dynamic keeps resurfacing, another layer of it, another picture of the same similar dynamic, and the remedy seems to be working, and then it comes back. Often homeopaths will then either repeat the potency or they'll go up in potency. The C4s give you another option. Often when you have a client like that, they keep coming back with the same dynamic and they start on the C4, then they start to not come back as often because they've actually been strengthened at that core where that issue is, and they don't need to see you as often.
That kind of makes sense just in terms of the whole, the area that C4 is activating or not activating, but where it's acting. So that's the core, the center of who we are. So if it's at the level of the heart, then that is really, you're not going to get any more, central to ourselves as human beings on this planet Earth. When you're, again, just a practical question, what kind of language or is there a typical kind of language or something a person might say that again might get you thinking, maybe I should be thinking in this realm?
Why does this keep happening to me? I do all that I can. I've done all this therapy and this just keeps happening to me again and again and again. What's the meaning of it? Where's the value? What is my purpose in life here? You know, I'm running out of time. I want to get on with why am I here? Surely this existence that I've had, which may have been absolutely wonderful, surely that's not all there is. It's a bit cliched, but it's when the person is actually also talking, they're ready to do the next step.
I think there's a lot of people that do get to that point, and it's interesting how our regular materia medica doesn't always account for the positive aspects of that inner work and desiring to move forward and expand and like really be free. So it's interesting. I think these potencies seem to just offer another avenue for that kind of patient who's on that journey. Tell me, so you can use just regular, like pulsatilla, CPR,
Yes,
the regular potencies.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're talking at the conference, or I'm talking at the conference, about the homeopathic Australian flora remedies, because there's been so few that have been actually proven. And as I said in the talk before, we live in the most isolated continent in the world, and there's treasures in every continent and country. What's here? This is where we are. What's here? We use things like pulsatilla, we use things like Gelsenia and Zigium from other countries. What's here for us to use and for us to share as well?
That's why I really found the whole story that evolved through this process for the trituration group quite amazing. The way it really, there was something about the substances from this land that immediately called our attention to this land. Would you agree?
Yeah. One of the things with Australia is that it was connected to Gondwana land, and you're going back over 300 million years. So is Africa, Antarctica, South America, and India, and a lot of the other little island countries in the Southern Hemisphere. It was around about 140 million years ago that Africa and South America and then India separated out from Gondwana, leaving Australia and New Zealand still attached. And it's only about 50 million years ago that Australia actually separated out. There's still plants here in Australia, some in WA and some in Tasmania, that are considered to be Gondwana relics. That's a term. And that's one of the reasons that we looked at the Xanthoria presi, which is the Balga, the grass tree. I think I've just got off track. What was your question?
Yeah, me too. How the remedies from the land really brought out in the trituration experience. For example, just how the messages coming through immediately were connected to here, Australia in particular, and the First Nation people.
A lot of the messages that came through, like what was said when we were doing the Acacias, was we were told quite clearly we were doing it the wrong way. We were told that we needed to talk to the aunties, which sent a couple of us on a journey. In the Wandoo, we were still, it's a journey that's going to continue. We did have found a number of Wajak Noongar aunties that have given us permission to source plants. It's a very political, controversial thing that's going on, but thank you for Auntie Violet. And what we've noticed is that as we've talked to more Noongar people, and they've given us little insights along the way. You can see when we get to Balga, to then Xantheria, that there's much more conversation, much more interaction with the actual plant substance in human form, because from a Noongar point of view, there's no difference between a spirit form being in a human form or a spirit form being in a plant form or a spirit form being of the earth. They're all interconnected and they're all related. So that aspect of having the Noongar on side and being given permission has flowed through to the actual plants that we've been triturating, and they've just given us all this wonderful information, which when you look at Acacia, there's layers to that were not there.
So interesting. I didn't take part in the Bulgar, so I did the other two. That's really interesting to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll enjoy the story. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything more that comes to mind, Sally, that you'd want to add? Otherwise, we can maybe look and see if
there's any questions.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've just come up with one myself. Sorry, crowd that's out there. We'll get to you. What is the value of this? What is the value in a homeopath taking part in a trituration, in a C4 trituration? What is the value in that? Do you feel? What could even ask? Do you feel it is a valuable thing that somebody should bother to go to the lengths to do? And
everybody should do. As everybody should do some kind of approving at some point. It gives you a personal experience, a personal insight into the process. It takes away or adds to the intellectual side of it, because a lot of learning of a remedy is very intellectual.
It is.
And a trituration gives you another, because you're doing it over such a long period of time, and you actually are having, hopefully, physical, mental, emotional insights within your physical body, it leaves you with a very strong sense of an experience of a remedy, so that when a client walks in the door, it clicks, you get it, you've heard it, you've felt it before. It's one of the reasons, a lot of the books say you should do a proving of any kind. Well, it's the same with the C4s.
I think there's also a difference in that collectiveness. So doing it in the group, I feel does add another dimension. There's an intensity I feel that comes through whereas maybe with a proving sometimes actually there are provings done in groups, so scrap that. But I feel, as having gone through the experience, it certainly is quite different, and it's quite an interesting thing to experience yourself in. So when, for me, it was about learning how to let the things come up. So if because you might just feel like you're having a daydream. And so part of your mind wants to lock things down and not acknowledge it, or think that you're just daydreaming. But then when you go to share in the group, you might find that actually other people have had a similar
you weren't the only one with the daydream.
And so it's quite weird. Like sometimes you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't keep my eyes open. I'm falling asleep. This is so bad, and it's just interesting how you can observe yourself having an experience, and then also how you engage with your own experience. So for me, I found that quite valuable, and the triturations for me have been a leaping point to really a different way of experiencing information internally. Like I've realized I'm quite visual, and it's about allowing these things to arise and actually just go with them, because it is of significance to yourself, even if it might not make sense. And I think for me at the time, everything makes sense in time, but I think it's a very interesting process to go through.
Significance to oneself when we're looking at the C5, which is the the individual unconscious aspects, and then the C6 when you're looking at the collective unconscious aspects. I completely agree with you there, that aspect of sometimes you feel like you're having a daydream, or there's these people having this conversation in your head, and you think, okay, is this me? And then when you check in and have the feedback round, and you find out that you were not the only one having that conversation. It helps validate, and it helps you feel like you're not going crazy. Yeah.
I'm just looking in the chat, and I see somebody said, hello, have you involved any Indigenous people in the Tribulations? Now, I know that I thought you might like to answer that,
yes.
Sally.
With the Balga, we had 2 Indigenous people that were invited. Balga was quite interesting because we had 11 people that said they were quite interested. And it was the first remedy that we had where there ended up being 5 people. 2 of those other 6 let us know they weren't coming, and the others, we just didn't hear from them. So the answer to that is they've been invited, but they haven't turned up. Don't know why.
Yeah.
We didn't get any feedback around that, which is not an uncommon, or it's been a similar thing with exploring, getting permission, or trying to find somebody that would give us or share with us the information around why the remedies are saying you're doing it the wrong way and you need to talk to the aunties, because that's it's very private for them. It's very personal, and they're wary of Caucasians, still very much so. And we've kind of had to earn that. And one of the ways that we've had to earn it, I think, this is my personal thoughts, is time, patience, perseverance, being ignored, and time, patience, go down another route. No, they didn't answer the emails. No, they didn't answer the phone. Okay, you've asked us 3 times now. Now we'll talk to you. As an example, it's, you know, they're wary, and rightly so. The track record has not been good. One of our agendas is possibly to shift that a little bit. In the last 5 years, there's been a huge upsurge in acknowledgement and respect from our Caucasian aspect of society for the original people of this land. And I wouldn't say that we're piggybacking on that. I think it's just happened at the same time. And I'd really like it to continue. So they'll be invited again.
So you will continue? We're going to continue with more triturations?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. We were sort of thinking that we would get through the conference and then reassess.
Yeah, I love the way, you know, it is a journey. It's a journey through each substance, but actually it's been a bit of a journey through each of them. You know, it's a bigger story that's developed along the way, which has been interesting.
To bring a new substance into being a homeopathic remedy, I think takes more than just one proving of it. One proving is great. You get a lot of really good information and concepts about how you would use it with your clients. But the more it's proved, and proved in different ways, you get more information, and that fills it out more. It's one of the reasons why sulfur is such a big remedy. It's one of the reasons pulsatilla is such a big remedy. It's being used so often, little more every time it gets used, there's another insight that comes. And I think there's going to be that with these Australian flora remedies as well.
That's wonderful. That'll keep us going for a long time.
A few 100 years, probably.
Okay. I don't know. Gabrielle, are there any other questions I haven't picked up that have come up?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. So when doing your trituration within the group, Does each individual attendee do their own personal trituration, or are you sharing a single trituration, taking it in turns?
Each individual has their own mortar and pestle and are doing their own. There might be 5 or 6, there might be 20 of you sitting around tables doing this. At the end of each round, a little bit of what is in your bowl, pestle, mortar, is taken and put into a collective pile. That's the pile that gets sent to the apothecary to be made into a remedy. You can keep some of it yourself to make it into a remedy yourself, but generally one of the reasons we're doing it is to get that culmination thing. So there's a little bit of both to answer that question.
And are you scribing? Are people talking as they're pestling?
Yes, you get very dexterous with one hand scribing, grinding, and the other hand writing or drawing pictures of things that are coming up.
There tends to not really be conversation. It's quite introspective.
No. Yeah. Between the rounds, when you finish the round of scraping and grinding, then you have a check-in with each other round, which, like I said, the scraping and the grinding takes about an hour. The checking can take up to an hour. It depends on how many people are in the trituration and how much everyone's got to say, because sometimes there's nothing to say. That is when you tend to actually talk and find out that, what others are going through. And then you launch into the next round.
That's fascinating. And then another question is, would you please just spell out the different medicines, the plants or remedies that have been proved that you're doing, especially the 3 that you're talking about at the conference, and because people want to follow up with natural history and fulfilling those kind of background information as well.
Australian Acacias, WA.
I'm just wondering if there's because the Acacias was actually 4 different ones.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah, but sorry, are you asking for me to, for example, put it in the chat exactly? People can see it?
Why not, if you have that information?
Yes.
Otherwise, we know that it will go, you'll bring it to your presenters page within the online conference platform.
First one we did was Australian Acacias. That's the S on the end, so it's a plural. And it was Acacia longifolia, Acacia floribunda, which are the 2 eastern states acacias that will also grow in WA, and Acacia pulchella and Acacia dentifolia, which grow in WA along the Darling Range around the Perth area in general. The eucalyptus that we did was Eucalyptus wandoo, which grows from Geraldton in the north down through the southwest of Western Australia to the Stirling Ranges outside of Albany. It sort of covers that whole southwest corner. It's a white gum, or considered a white gum, when it sheds its bark. It's also quite a tannin coloured gum as well. It's a hardwood, and it's used by the Noongar people for spears, and the women used it for digging sticks. And the Caucasians have used it to tan hides. It's very high in tannin, a very high quality, as well as a lot of tannin. The Xanthoria preci, grass tree balga, is balga. It's a grass tree. Grows predominantly in the southwest corner of Australia, and it has relatives that grow in the eastern states, Tasmania and Northern Territory as well.
That's very fascinating. So
that's 3 remedies.
two flowering plants and one, and also the Xanthorrhea is a flowering and it's a monocot, isn't it? The other two are dicots. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Okay, the acacias, if I can pronounce this right, Fabaceas, from the Fabaceae family.
Yeah.
Yep, the eucalyptus are from the Myrtaceae family.
Yeah.
And the Xanthorrhea is a dicotyledon. They're all flowering.
Yes. Right.
Currently, 80% of Australian flowering plants are native as well, so they're quite common.
Yeah. You have a very interesting crossover with the conference with Michal Yakir, who will be giving
forward to her talk.
Yeah. So the talk later in the evening of that Saturday is she's going to be talking about a lot of aspects of the ancients and what the ancient plants pre-flowering times. So that's definitely also Gondwanan time or pre-Gondwanan, and what the messages are. She talks about seven phases, and we actually did a blind trituration when she was here a few years ago, and it ended up being what she's presenting on Saturday evening, which is Araucaria bidwili, and it is definitely Indigenous, and in the area where I have had some education from some aunties, it is known as the Tree of Knowledge. So very much looking forward to her proving and the what she has to tell us about that. So it's a beautiful overlap.
I think that will intermesh really well with the Xanthorrhea, because it's a very old, and it comes through that it's a very old, and it's old knowledge that it's sharing. Yeah. That's great. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the whole conference, actually.
Yeah, it's a great lineup.
It is. Thank you so much, Sally and Angela, for a wonderful presentation. I'm just going to share my video, because I just want to say thank you to absolutely everyone that's come tonight to listen to this. We're getting really excited about the conference now. You know, we couldn't bring it to the land, to Melbourne. We couldn't have our get together in October 2020. So it just became a necessity, because a lot of people were saying, are we going to do it? What will we do? Everyone seemed to be getting more into getting online. And I want you to know that we've been working really hard to make this an enjoyable event. So a lot of people get worried about being in a chair all day or getting fatigued. So we're definitely being very creative at working at making this like a super enjoyable experience. So when Sally and Angela have brought us this thing from the bush, like, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed that experience being out there in WA land. It was lovely. So you can see from this, hopefully can everyone see that? I'm just sharing with you all of our fantastic presenters that are coming, not just from Australia. We have a beautiful lineup from within Australia, but also from around the world. This was an opportunity to bring some presenters that had made great applications for papers for October last year, but just couldn't come out here. So we're bringing those as well. So that's really exciting. If you haven't already signed up, just so that you know, it's very easy to register. Just go to the AHA website and you'll find the FIG there. Follow the FIG and you'll find the Inside Out online registration, and you get a whole weekend, 16 plus CPD points. So there's a lot of education. And as I said, it's all very different and it's all different timings. So you'll find it actually, it's more of a production. It needs to be quite entertaining, we've decided. And then you can get together with your homies, as I call them, your colleagues. We're going to have some rooms just where you can go and have a cup of tea and a chat or whatever it is you like to imbibe, and some other rooms where people will also just be wanting to discuss a few interesting aspects a bit further. You can also engage with your different branches if you want, because we also want to have this just getting together and social aspect. It's very easy to get around the learning platform. You'll find it like a really easy experience, and we have professionals on board to help us do that, who'll be attending to us all weekend. And later on, if you can't make it to everything, then you can access everything forever and go and watch everything recorded. So watch what you say, Sally. And yeah, there's good points in time, and it's super good value. It's the first time we've been doing this, but it was an impulse and a necessity that has happened because of everyone's enthusiasm and co-collaboration. So thanks to everyone so far. Thank you so much, you two, for tonight.
It's a pleasure.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
looking forward to that weekend in May, 22nd, 23rd.